to the blow, death to the blow we are seeking. You're gonna lose it all. Babylon is going to fall. The beast so gone with the ball. May she rest in pieces. May she rest in pieces. We're not spinning through space or flying through the Milky Way. Nonetheless, you are on some kick-ass drug. One that always blows out, oceans can't curve around a ball. Stars always stay on the same course year after year. Einstein was a turd. Hawking is a fraud. NASA is a hoax. Coriolis is a bunch of bull.
All right, we are live 7/12/2024. This is One Eyed Jack and the Shells, Death to the Ball, Requiem in E minor. We're on the eve of the anniversary of the famous blackouts, the Manhattan blackouts that occurred in 1979 and in 2019 on 7/13, connected to the Son of Sam shootings back then. But the thing we noted when the blackout in 2019 happened was that it was noted by the mainstream media that it was 42 years to the day. It put 42,000 people in the dark, and it started at 42nd Street. And so we noticed this interesting connection between this theme of the number 42 and blackouts. And so we'll probably continue to look at this and other very important and strange numbers. And we're not the ones assigning meaning to any of this stuff. We're just looking at what the MSM does with their various psyops. And it largely seems like it's based in the stars. You know that J.P. Morgan quote, millionaires don't believe in astrology, but billionaires do? Well, the trillionaires use it for sure. And well, beyond trillionaires, the capstone level programmers. And we have a they. You know, people say, well, who's the they? Who's in control? It doesn't really matter with regard to what they look like, where they come from. The they is the programmers. Whoever occupies that position. And the programmed are subject to the programmers. The deprogrammed are very few. You have some who are, I guess, in a way brought into it, but that's not the same as being deprogrammed. You can have someone who's very well aware that they fake all the mass shootings, but they think space is real. We, the deprogrammed, aren't encumbered by any of this. We're not compartmentalized. Our heads aren't in boxes. Joined by Diana South, Oswaldo, Psyops Matter, Gematria 101, Tricky Woo, ExploringAgain.com, Booster Bear, Auto Hoaxer, P-Trippa103, Elephant Tusks, Copaesthetic, Ryler05. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, should they remake the show Herman's Head? I'm not familiar with it, but sure. Herman's Head, if you want to post a link, who directed it? Because I might be interested in watching it. I've been looking at various directors and who might be worth mind mapping out from the perspective of these are the newsbenders. These are the metascriptors. These are the ones who are tasked with merging fantasy with reality. People like James Cameron, Stanley Kubrick, obviously one of the greats. We can go through a list of them. And last night we mentioned some of the work from Alan Moore, V for Vendetta, and how it reflects not only right now, Trump as he is right now, but it also reflected in 2020 with the St. Mary's virus thing. All right, Flozik, HLGGLH, Clockwork 113, Mango Penguins, Frank Murd, Tominoid. Oh, Inside Out Pixar is Herman's Headish. Okay. anything Pixar is worth looking at. Pixar gives a lot of clues about the number 113. And in Wall-E, and it's even encoded into the Wall-E logo, Wall-E has a lot of interesting facets. It's a retelling of Noah's Ark. It's got Otto, who's like Hell 9000, and it has these other elements related to the number 113 being a code for abandoned ship regarding planet Earth, like a disaster code, and the president puts a mask on. Anyway, we'll look at, again, the movies, the directors, the companies. Pixar's a big one. And it's not even hard to discern. Before I ever knew who Greta was, I started notice. I saw her visage on the news. I hadn't listened to her yet. And I saw at a CVS, I saw one of these shelves just full of dolls that looked like little Gretas, and it was from Frozen. And I thought, okay, this has got to be some way of packaging this Greta character to the youth. And so I looked into it, and sure enough, and it was admitted that Disney's Frozen 2 was certainly pandering to the Greta generation. And the whole story was this Greta-looking character is mad at her parents and the older generation because they screwed up the weather in the kingdom of Arendelle or some such. P-Trip by Alec Baldwin, manslaughter case dismissed. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Some kind of hidden evidence, not quite sure. Now, Helena Hutchins isn't really dead, and Joel Souza didn't really get shot, and Alec Baldwin was a crisis actor. I think this is a big story from a Metascript perspective. The connections between The Hunt for Red October, which had Alec Baldwin but also takes place in Helena Hutchins' hometown, has a lot to do with it. And the chapel where the shooting happened with the 44. And it was Stage Union 44. The 44 is an interesting code in all of this stuff. In fact, I'd mentioned the son of Sam. I think they called him Mr. 44. Fun ending to the story, says Booster Bear. Yeah, well, my interest in it was like, what is the bigger message here? And you have this Alec Baldwin, who is the most Trump deranged syndromed person out there. I think they had to bring out Robert De Niro because Baldwin was indisposed, but he would dress up as Trump for SNL. He was the designated Trump character. And someone had asked him, how does this make you feel playing Trump all the time? And he says, I want a meteor to hit the White House. Just an innocuous joke, right? Well, then here he is in this chapel, this 44, and he shoots somebody that happens to have Donald Trump's birthday. Donald Trump's birthday being 6/14, and the person he shoots, 6/14. And I remember noting, it's like, wow, this guy's got Trump derangement syndrome. It's so bad he shoots somebody who has the same birthday. Like it triggered him or something. But more interestingly, his statement about the meteor hitting the White House, I think correlates not only to the shooting, but to what was out at the time in the theaters. It was Don't Look Up. And Don't Look Up in the trailer said that there's this comet that's going to destroy the Earth in 6 months and 14 days. So you have this 6/14 connection. This thing about to destroy the Earth, or the meteor about to hit the White House. So we were looking at this stuff, from a bigger picture, and then you bring in Hunt for Red October, Tom Clancy, who is credited with having predicted 9/11. And it all has to do with Russia, their nuclear submarine, which at the time of the Rust shooting was in the news quite frequently, along with the Satan II missile. But there's a lot of interesting intrigue about this whole Alec Baldwin shooting. I think that Hannah Reed, the one who handed him the gun, is an interesting character. She had the spider tattoo on her belly, which is a red flag. It was like a Black Widow. And later, after the entire thing took place, they took down the set, and one of the stagehand workers had his arm infected by a spider bite, and they nearly had to amputate it. So I thought that's got to be some kind of I don't know, almost looks cursed. And there is this thread that would connect Crow Salvation and the shooting on the set to this Rust shooting. There's a person there that kind of connects the two. Another fake shooting, of course, Brandon Lee's fake death at, what was it? He was son of Bruce Lee, who also had a similarly faked death connected to this idea of dying on a movie set. All right, let's see. Ted Stryker says, I hate being late. I do send out live stream notifications. If you're not subscribed, ips.monster, or join Patreon. and you will always get live stream notifications. Commenter says Biden has zero chance of winning. Oh, the elections are fake, and I'm voting for Biden, by the way. I'm voting for Biden because I know the elections are fake. They're as fake as moon landings for all practical purposes. And why would you vote for somebody who believes in moon landings anyway? They have questionable judgment. You can't trust them with the keys. So what I'm saying is I'm voting for Biden because I know it's fake, but opting out is an acceptable position. But there's this tendency in conspiracy realm, the conspiracy theories always tend to gravitate towards the right, and they've all gathered around Trump, especially with Q. So they're all voting for Trump. And I think if Trutherville is marching lockstep with the GOP, I want to make a protest vote against them and how programmed they are. And if they're mad at me for voting for Biden, I'm going to have to ask them, do you think votes matter? Because if so, then we're going to have a talk. All right, let's continue. Joined by King Ravana, let's go. J Diggs, Son of Sam, 44 caliber killer. Yeah, and this was a 44 that was used. And one of the other meanings that, if we get into the nuance here, the 44 has a lot to do with Trump. It has a lot to do with this shooting scenario. Because you remember, just to tie it back to 2023 or forward, because this happened after the fact, on 4/4, which was the 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination. So you already have this shooting situation kind of imposed over the state. 4/4, Trump is being arraigned. He's there in court, and they're filming Joker 2 outside. And on this day, Heath Ledger would have turned 44. But there's this new Joker because Heath Ledger died. So the new Joker happens to be named Phoenix, Joaquin Phoenix, which has connotations of rebirth, second coming. And this is where the 44 comes in, because the 4 is a cross. The double cross is a symbol of resurrection. And we often observe various ways that this is represented. The second coming, Judgment Day, T2. Put two T's together, same symbol. Anyway, my point being here, we were looking at the Joker connections and the Batman connections to this Trump scenario as it pertains to the Mr. 44, Son of Sam, and this chaos agent, this shooter, and what this number 44 pertains to. And again, I think it has to do with this Judgment Day kind of theme they put out there. Going through your comments here. There was a Son of Sam movie directed by Spike Lee, kind of notable, because I suspect Spike Lee directed the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd event. And I think James Cameron directed the Rodney King beating. We've been talking about these things lately. Alright, greetings Penguin, says JC. Booster Bear says, you think Trump will have parallels legal to this case? Or will it invert and he'll go to jail for 44 years? Based on the script, and I'm not basing this on being some kind of a politico or a political junkie, but rather I'm something of an alien anthropologist in all of this. This is very Ivory Tower, off-world stage. And so if we're looking at the news as a pre-scripted series of events that are going to go into the historic record that are acted out on the world stage and treated as real, then we can look at predictive programming as a predictive model, as foreshadowing. And all of the foreshadowing has to do with this martyrdom of Trump that is yet to come. And that's why you've had this Christification, this Christ typology. And it's not just them. It's not just Trump's camp putting it onto him that he's some sort of a Christ-like figure, but it's all around. I mean, on the eve of his arraignment, that Sunday is Holy Week, in fact. During this Holy Week, Marjorie Taylor Greene's calling him Jesus, but SNL has him as Jesus at the Last Supper. But this reoccurring messaging surrounding Trump is that he is some kind of messianic character, a JFK-like character, who is going to be given some sort of a head wound. And we've been talking about this for some time because we are PSYOP aware, because we know what predictive programming is. We're not prophets, and we're not cherry picking. We just have a little more awareness. When 2001 rolled around, 9/11 happened, none of us knew what was going on. None of the conspiracy theorists had a clue. We were all programmed. There were no deprogrammed. InfoWars is not deprogrammed. They're part of the program. They're the anti to the pro. They're part of the dialectic. So we would not have been watching the news and the movies with great interest saying, hey guys, look, 9/11, a lot of stuff, it's going down in New York. Nobody was talking about that because it wasn't understood what we were looking at. It was, hindsight, 2020, everything seemed to be pretty apparent that it was predicted. How did we not notice? So since we've become a little more aware of how this stuff works and how these trends can be predicted, we've taken this a little more seriously. And when I was watching Netflix during my binging of Netflix, I was trying to catch up on all the predictive programming. I watched this series called Colony. In season 3, episode 11, described this Operation Phoenix after this alien invasion. Everything was shut down. And there was a statement that I heard. It was, Seattle will be ground zero for the reboot of civilization. And I noted that there's a lot of correspondences between not just the stories, but even the season and the episode numbers. So I'm looking 311, Seattle, ground zero for the reboot of civilization after an alien invasion and no one sees the aliens, they're invisible. So it practically predicted what was to come. But based upon that, the Wednesday, 3/11/2020, we were expecting, okay, there's something going to go down in Seattle. That's going to be the ground zero. And sure enough, they did declare pandemic, but it was in Seattle where the ground zero was. So I was like, okay, well, we've been somewhat vindicated. And as we follow along with the predictive programming, yeah, it's very consistent. Leave the world behind, followed by all this stuff with Boeing. And there are some developments with the whole Boeing narrative, by the way. Okay, moving on. Dr. Shiva for president, says Ryler05. Yeah, I someone is reaching out to me. Someone wants me to talk to Dr. Shiva, and I looked at it, but I'm just not really that passionately anti-Zionist, and that's his thing, and I could care less. And if that makes me sound cruel or detached, it's because I'm not involved in your mind wars. I'm not involved in the info war. I'm not taking any of these hardline positions. I'm not voting. I think if you're voting, you're following a dupe. If you're not duped yourself. And that's not an oversimplification. We are in a world of brainwashed people, and the fact that I've opted out doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me lazy, and there are some truthers who feel like if you're not agitated, you're not paying attention. You're not waking people up. It's like, well, neither are you. You're programming people yourself even deeper. Truthers are infecting one another with nearly incurable mind viruses. And we can do what we can with mind war inoculation. You can lead them, but people have to deprogram on their own. And it's pretty muddy out there. It's pretty bad. It's murky. It's a very murky environment. The fog of Psywar is thick. But we're working on something here. We have a big project coming up. In fact, let me just briefly bring this up since I put a video out about it and I have some comments. We are going to be doing an organized observation of the so-called space station according to what their tracking sites say we should expect to see. But we were talking about this all morning, and we decided that we have to rule out certain classes of evidence. And we realized that all of the transits that we see on these big popular channels are solar transits for a reason. The reason why they use solar and lunar transits, one, to get rid of eyewitnesses, and two, so they can cherry pick. Now they can cherry pick and get some data that fits their model and verifies it in such a way that it's like, well, if it wasn't so, they would not have been able to have made this particular alignment on this night. And then they have multiple observers doing transits in front of the moon, and with the parallax, they're able to say, well, this is this altitude. It's this many kilometers away. It's 250 miles away. So they're able to validate their own model by cherry picking their own transits. And these are transits that you can't see. You have to be looking at it from their particular telescope where they are relative to the moon. So what I'm saying is, what we're doing is different because our observations are going to be eyes only. Not only that, it's not just a little blip going across the moon, like when they fake these lunar transits. I'm going to expect to see the entirety of it. So if the tracking site says it's going to be over your head for 6 minutes, if we don't see a 6 minute video, we reject it. We're going to get all the video that we possibly can, and we're going to assess it. And I do have someone who's a pilot and also has extensive experience in air traffic control who will know immediately if it's an airplane or not. I also have plans to take it by some UFO debunkers because I've come to certain conclusions, or at least in my own mind, I think I know what's going on. But there's this trutherism where they'll say, I don't believe in space stations, but something is up there. And they're using what I call maybe Bigfoot logic. I talked about this yesterday. In fact, I mentioned it this morning. What do Bigfoot, UFOs, and space stations have in common? So let me go ahead and go through this because what I'm elucidating here is what I mean by the new axiom. Autohoaxology axiom 35. Moving lights in the sky are airplanes until proven otherwise. So multiple observers will eliminate what I'm calling maybe Bigfoot claims. Maybe Bigfoot claims refer to ambiguous ones, made by witnesses who claim to have seen something either mundane or supernatural, they can't be sure which. So they're like, well, either I saw a plane or I saw some craft that's so high tech that we can't even fathom what it is. Okay, either something completely normal or something completely batty. Something super, it's like it can't be that big of a gap. It should really be ruling out what's normal and expected first, Occam's razor, before we insert something that is unknown that you can't even describe. So, for example, every time you see a light in the sky, you really can't make the case, I think that's a UFO. No, it might be unidentified to you, but that doesn't qualify it as a UFO. So that's another subject here, UFOs. Who gets to designate it a UFO? Just because I don't know what it is doesn't mean it's an unidentified flying object, because it is being tracked. It's in airspace where it's being monitored. Everything is being tracked to some level. So you can't really say it's unidentified just because you don't know. That becomes an argument from ignorance, from personal ignorance. And this is kind of similar to the structure of the chemtrail psyop, where they'll say, well, I don't know what that cloud is. Well, that doesn't mean it's not known. You may be ignoring available evidence and information in order to falsely assert another claim, surreptitiously, dishonestly, which is what I'm asserting here, that the space station itself and belief in it is really the result of manipulation and dishonest, or rather bad claims. I'll say bad claims. Some people aren't dishonest, but they do make bad claims. And we're going to get rid of bad claims. Let me go ahead and open the phone here. And wait, one more thing before I take this phone call. And this is what's going to make or break it, as far as whether or not there's a space station or not. If it really is 300 miles up, we're going to know. If it's not, we're going to know. And if we can't find that this thing is the height they say it is, the altitude they say it is with multiple observers, then we're going to have to say that we'll see. I don't want to jump the gun here, but we're going to make it very clear by the end of this night that no one's going to be able to walk away ambiguous. We're going to have an answer. And our answer is going to be, who knows? I'm open. I'm open to it being a space station. I'd like to have my mind blown. I'd like to see something I haven't seen, but I don't have my hopes up. All right, let me go ahead and open phones here. We had some issues last night, but I fixed them. There's a gremlin. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me
Can
okay?
you hear me this time?
Loud and clear.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so you can hear me. Good. This is Jurassic, man.
Oh, what's up, Jurassic?
Yeah. Before I talk about anything, do you have any questions for me or anything you want to talk about before I bring up what I want to talk about?
No, but I did pass by your channel today, and I saw you had the weekend up there, and I'd discussed the weekend and Brock Purdy and the Headwound at the Super Bowl, so I was kind of curious as to what you were saying. But no, what is the news?
Oh, yeah, I put out, yeah, about the Headwound. I put this out back in, right when he had the head, when he was wearing the stupid bandages on his head, that dummy Headwound. I mean, that dummy the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's the one.
Okay, yeah, it was back in it was back in November of 2020 when he first was doing it, and I had put out the video connecting it to Trump's head wound. This was on my channel that got terminated. Then I redid the video a few times over the years, the connection. So what is your take on why he was wearing the bandages?
Well, my breakdown was, for people who don't know, The Weeknd came out doing this really bizarre performance art piece at the Super Bowl where he had this bandage on his head and he was surrounded by clones. And at the time, it made no sense. Although I thought, okay, well, his name is Abel, and he was born on February 16th, so you have the 216 connection to 8-4. But Abel and Headwound go hand in hand. Then, at this last Super Bowl, we had Brock Purdy, BP 216, who was compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. So now we have a connection between Headwound and this sniper, both pertaining to Super Bowls. So I was looking at it from that context. So he's obviously some kind of propaganda prop carrying this icon, this image, this bloody head wound thing around. And beyond that, though, I think that's where I left it. So what else is there that you've seen?
Well, okay, so let me tell you the connections about The Weeknd, why he wore those bandages. Because see, it's all about Trump getting his head wound and the comeback. Okay, and let me just first start with this. So you know that Trump was born on 6/14. The Weeknd, he was born in area code 416, which is Toronto, Canada. And 416 is kind of the same numbers as 6/14, right? Same stupid numbers, but twisted. And Trump's born on 6/14. 6 times 14 equals 84, because Trump's going to get his head wound on 8/4, right? And August 4th is the 217th day of the year, right? And The Weeknd, he's born on 2/16, like you said, right? And I told you that Trump is connected to the Elvis, and of course Elvis Aaron Presley, his full name equals 216. And the reason he's going around wearing that stupid bandages, before I give you any other connections, because right now you're probably thinking, well, I don't see anything important. Okay, well, Abel, like you said, the Abe connects to the Lincoln, connects to the head, connects to an assassination, right?
Right,
and
Abel,
Right, and his real name is Abel McConan Tesfaye, which in Gematria, the forward numbers on a calculator, it would equal 185.68, and Donald John Trump equals 185.68. So half of the full numbers in Gematria equals, the same as Donald John Trump. So that's a big connection. You have to see the calculator to understand what I'm saying, but it equals the same as numbers. Half of it, I'm saying.
Okay, now as far as new developments, though, because we're less than a month from 8/4, and I've been pointing out to a lot of people here that we are at the point where it's beyond vindication. It's reiterated consistently by even mass media sources that I've already talked about many times. So what do you see as the next thing? What is the next development?
Well, no, I just wanted to make sure people understood that this is something they've been planning for this whole time. But let me just real quick tell you this last part. So I told you it's all about why he wore the bandages. The bandages, because the word bandages equals the word comeback in Gematria, exactly the same, every single number. And The Weeknd, the way he spells his name, he spells it without the third E. He spells it WEEKND. He takes out the E. The way he spells it, The Weeknd, equals exactly the words head wound. Same exact numbers. So you have the Weeknd equaling head wound, and you have bandages equaling comeback. And stupid Trump wrote a book called The Art of the Comeback.
Right, The Art of the Comeback. That's correct. Forgot about that.
Yeah, and the first time that people saw The Weeknd in public with his bandages, full-on bandages, because before that he was just wearing like a little bit of a nose bandage, but he came on full bandages over his head and everything. was at the American Music Awards, and that was the 48th American Music Awards, which is like the 8-4 backwards, 4884, right?
Is that the one where he
And
was carrying the
guess
black?
what day that
He was
was?
carrying like a black pyramid thing in his hands. Is that the one?
Oh wow, I don't remember now. I don't remember what he was carrying. I
I'll
didn't
pull
really
it up.
see
I'll
it.
pull
I
it up on the
just know
screen
the
for you. But
date.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and the guess what the date was for that event? I'll give you a hint. It was in November.
I see it here. Go ahead and tell me or tell us because
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
put him up on the screen.
November 22nd. November 22nd, JFK's death date. You see?
11/22. Okay, yep, I see it. 11/22. 11/22. JFK's death date. The weekend comes out with this head wound bandage thing, and the bandage comeback both correlate as far as their numerical value. Bandage
Yeah, the
comeback and
weekend
head
equals
wound.
head. Yeah,
Interesting.
the
Oh, by the
weekend
way,
equals head when bandages equals comeback.
he's got a video called Save Your Tears, which is just replete with Stanley Kubrick references. Like it's basically Eyes Wide Shut. So you have a Kubrick reference, and he directed the JFK assassination, in my opinion. But you have the weekend at a Kubrick-like party, and he ends the video by putting a gun to his head. He pulls the trigger, and everybody's screaming, and then they all applause because it was a fake shooting. It's called Save Your
Wow.
Tears.
Okay, I never seen that.
Yeah, Save Your
Wow.
Tears
No,
is
I
I
never
think it's a
saw
hint
that.
about the fake head wound.
Yeah, and you were talking about the Super Bowl. You know that before I tell you, the word Satan equals 55, and he was at the 55th Super Bowl that stupid weekend with the head wound because the Antichrist is going to get a head wound. So Satan was equals 55, and he had the head wound because that's what he was dressed like with that stupid bandages, right? At the Super Bowl too.
Right. And see, it didn't make sense to any of us who weren't in the know. Like regular people were confounded by this. Like, what the hell is this grotesque uh, head wound thing he's doing? What's his whole thing? And I think it has a deeper meaning to the people in the know, the eyes wide shut level initiates being alluded to in this Save Your
Right.
Tears video. And a couple other things here. Before the lockdowns, he had this video Blinding Lights, which was the top song of 2020. All the dancing nurses loved it. And his whole video is he as a Joker-like character driving around Vegas, and it's all locked down already.
Wow. Okay.
But the main thing here is that he's been kind of in our sights for some time, and this head wound thing, we watched it develop start to finish, and now the Super Bowl connections with Brock Purdy compared to Oswald, highly pertinent here. And you made the connection,
Yeah.
Barack to Barack, like Barack Obama, which, again, his movie,
Right.
Barack Obama's movie, came out on Kennedy's assassination date. And it takes place in a zip code with a 1963 in it. So, again, that's reiterated here again.
Yeah. And well, let me just finish with the Super Bowl thing, and then I'll be done. So he was at the 55th Super Bowl. Satan equals 55, and he's wearing the head wound because the Antichrist is going to get a head wound, right? So, and it's of course connected to Trump. And I told you everything connected to Trump connects to Elvis. First of all, Trump, during 9/11, he was 55 years old. So he had the number of Satan at that time also. And he's going to get his head wound on August 4th, Trump. And August 4th is Obama's birthday. And in 2016, when Trump was elected, and in 2017 when he became president, 2/16/217 is just like August 4th because August 4th is the 2/16/217 day of the year. So when he got elected, Obama was 55 years old, and Trump was 70 that year. Okay? The year he got elected and the year he became, and when he became president, he was 70. He still was 70 when he became president. So he was elected at 70, became president at 70, and if you add up all the numbers between 70 and because he's 78 now, 70 through 78, if you add up all those numbers between 70 through 78, it equals 666. Okay?
Interesting. Okay, 666, by the way, 216, which is 84, or his birthday, 216, is 6 cubed. So there's a triple six built into this whole narrative. And also
Right.
the phoenix, because that's the number that Pythagoras claims, 216, is the phoenix cycle, the rebirth cycle. So you have rebirth, comeback, phoenix, all correlated with this. And I have a comment from Brandon MDM in here who says, the Weeknd had Satan flashing on the giant screens during his tour. And one more thing to add to that with the 55 and Satan connection, Trump was arrested and compared to Christ on 4/4, which was the 55th anniversary of MLK's assassination. And the number 55 had a lot
Wow.
of significance that entire year. In fact, it was the 55th Q drop that says the first arrest will shock the world. The storm is coming. So the number 55 was all over the Trump
Wow.
arrest last year.
Well, yeah. So let me just finish with the Super Bowl thing. So he was at the 55th Super Bowl, stupid weekend, 55th Super Bowl with the head wound. The Antichrist gonna get the head wound. So he was. Obama was 55 years old when Trump was elected and became president, and Trump's gonna get his head wound on Obama's birthday, who's born on 217th day of the year, and Obama was 55. Trump was 55 during 9/11, and the year that the Weeknd was born, Elvis was 55 years old. So he was literally Satan right there. He was 55 years old, and that year at the Super Bowl, it was the 24th Super Bowl, and before I tell you what the score was, Satan equals 55, and its reduced number is 10 because 5 plus 5 is 10. So 55 and reduced is 10. So 5510 would be Satan's numbers. And the score of that Super Bowl, when Elvis was 55, it was 55-10. That was the only time in the history of Super Bowl. And it equaled Satan, and that was the year Elvis turned 55.
This is fascinating. So let me just reiterate what I was bringing up, because it was the 55th year of MLK's death, right? And Trump was compared to Moses, and MLK was compared to Moses. But before that, you had this Terry Nichols beating that was similar to the Rodney King beating. So you have the King stuff where he talked about Martin Luther King's daughter took part of their protest there after that beating, and their beating. This beating was such an outrage, like the the Rodney King one, that you had MLK's daughter there, you had Reverend Al Sharpton, and the protesters shut down I-55. So they shut down I-55 for Terry Nichols. And then a few days later, they said a chunk of the sun was going to fall off from the 55th latitude. Then I see the storm, Q drop 55, and Trump going in on the 55th anniversary of MLK, and then Jamie Foxx, whose name has the FOXX, which is another code here. Jamie Foxx was 55 when he died, and then came back to life on the movie set. So you have another death, resurrection, and Jamie Foxx was heavily connected to the BLM movement at its inception with Trayvon Martin. So anyway, last year it was all about 55, death and resurrection, martyrs, and all that.
Yeah. You know, it's hard to concentrate because I was looking at the chat because you were saying, you were talking about somebody saying something in the chat. I was looking at it. By the way, I know it doesn't, listen, I could care less, but I'm just going to say this for them. First of all, I would never tell you to ban anybody, but to the viewers who are mocking me, believe me, you're going to bite your tongues off and burn in hell when you finally realize what you're saying. You pieces of trash. Okay. Anyway,
no, I understand. Look, yeah, there's a lot of critics, but low information critics or low information non-believers aren't all that relevant here. If somebody has a principled criticism, like for example, I can point out when people are using logical fallacies to get things across, but that's much different from what we're discussing here, and it is an undeniable fact that there is a subtext and symbolism and occult messaging all throughout our mass media immersive illusion. It's all over. There's no denying it at this point. So the fact that you've gone deeper into it shouldn't really cause anyone to balk at this thing. It's like, okay, this guy's done his homework.
But I just Yeah, but just real quick, man, I just want to emphasize how important this Super Bowl connection is. Okay, uh, look, the Super Bowl, the the only time in Super Bowl history that the score was 55-10 was in 1990, and Satan equals 55-10, and Elvis turned 55 that year. Do you understand how, what a ridiculous coincidence that is? You know, considering that I'm telling everybody that Elvis is the real Antichrist, but Trump is the one in the flesh. But that Super Bowl was won by the 49ers, and the 49ers play at Levi's Stadium. Levi's is Elvis.
Yes. And these Super Bowls are rituals.
Yeah.
They're rituals. Super Bowl 47 interests me. Super Bowl 47 had the Ravens versus 49ers, and that was the one that had a blackout for 33 minutes. And I think Super Bowl 47 is foreshadowing right now the presidential election number 47. And the 33 minutes of blackness, darkness, that's what we're still waiting for.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, definitely. All right, man. I just wanted to tell you, anyone who wants to watch the video about the weekend, I have it up right now under the live stream. It was my latest video. So if they want to watch that, they can.
I'll put a link to your channel.
And,
I'll put a link to your your YouTube channel in the chat below. And yeah, feel free to call back anytime because I find all this information to be intriguing. And I just now remembered about the weekend's video, Save Your Tears, and the Kubrick connections to a fake shooting. So it's very consistent with this character.
All right, bro. Take care, man. I'll call you definitely a few times more before August 4th coming up.
Sounds good. All right, we'll talk soon. Thank you again for the time, and have a great evening.
All right, bye.
All right, fascinating. Okay, phones are still open. Lieutenant Weinberg says the blackout was for 33 minutes and 55 seconds. Yeah, who knows what was happening? Beyonce was performing. Then they had a blackout. It was probably Obama and Jay-Z and Beyonce having a pizza party below the bleachers or something. I don't know. But the Blackout Bowl 47, I think, foreshadows right now. And I think it's significant that the quarterback of the 49ers was Colin Kaepernick because of his role with BLM, and he started the kneeling. You know, the whole symbol of the kneeling and the big deal they made about it, and then BLM was kneeling after Derek Chauvin was kneeling. And we were talking about this in 2020. What does that mean, the symbol of kneeling down? In this context, does it have a deeper significance? Which I think it does, but remember, it was foreshadowed back then. That was 2013. Mango Penguin says the Grammys are a ritual. Absolutely. Oh, the video link was down. Let me put another link up there. So if someone else has a better link for the channel, I'll see if I can find it again. I need to go ahead and bookmark it. It has the dates of the two events that he's talking about. I'll put it in there shortly. Lieutenant Weinberg, have you researched the Sullenberger Hudson plane landing on 1/15/2009? The fact that it was played after by Tom Hanks makes me think that it might have been staged. Not quite sure the meaning behind it all, but I'll have to look into it and the dates. You know, to me, everything is real until, it's fake until proven real. The consensus accepts it as real until proven fake. And if it didn't happen, rather, if they didn't experience it or see it, they just assume it happened. Because you can't watch everything. You have to assume there's some basic vetting going on. It can't all be fake. Well, nobody's saying it's all fake. But the big PR stunts are 100%, if they're fakeable, usually fake. If you can find the meaning behind it, the utility of it, then it usually stands out. Okay, let's get into the notes here. Yeah, again, tomorrow, 7/13. Very interesting date. We've talked about it before, all these dates that pertain to these significant events that seem to be foreshadowing or indicating the direction things are going. So this blackout stuff has been talked about quite a lot, actually too much, if you ask me. A lot of people are just, when are the 10 days of blackness coming? The QAnon's been waiting for blackouts. But it's certainly been the main theme of Leave the World Behind and other movies like that, that there's going to be some sort of temporary interruption, most likely EMP. And this has been the foreshadowing in movies like Godzilla versus King Kong. And Godzilla is the atomic bomb. It's a metaphor. And the frequent uses of empire. Frozen empire, new empire, empire begins with an EMP. It's pretty much consistent code. And here you have The Weeknd in Save Your Tears, a Kubrick-themed video with a headshot. Grotesque, makes no sense. And here he is on JFK's death day with the head wound. And this is, again, it's very consistent with what Caller has been talking about for some time. Yes, this one thread he follows, but then, you look at it and like, well, this is actually just one of many, and there are so many different characters who are carrying forth the same predictive programming. Okay, let's continue here. Phones are open. If you want to call in, the number is 563-999-3664. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, caller.
Hey, Tim, what's going on? It's Booster Bear.
Oh, hey, what's up, Booster Bear? What is your take on what we're discussing tonight,
Not
or
much.
anything else for that matter?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to call about in a second, because I was just wondering, like, about all of these, like, Gematria stuff. Like, has it ever been used to really predict stuff? Because that's something that the bears have brought up and shit. I'm not, like, a hardcore bear or anything, but, like, the way that it hasn't been used to be predictive, it's like, it's really complicated. So it's like a lot of it is after the fact. You kind of figure it out, but, like, it's hard for me to follow with the previous caller. You guys are moving fast. So, like,
Right, okay.
just kind of wondering what you think about that.
No, you cannot use Gematria to predict future events. And what you'll find, and this is huge on Twitter, is people will use these number calculations between dates and words, and they will make claims. And I investigated this after the Super Bowl, when all these different prophets were wrong. And I determined this is the result of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where you come up with a lot of right answers, and then you just circle a group of them, and it makes it look like you're a sharpshooter because you've just shot so many that you just find a tight group. But you don't look at the ones where you didn't get it right. So it's a way of falsely appearing to be able to predict future events. But what we're doing is we're more or less deciphering messages within the subtext in the big media picture here. So for example, 9/11, there's a whole body of predictive programming in comic books, movies, in novels, and clearly these artists weren't connected, so there's some overarching story they're all adhering to. But we're looking at not just numbers, but also names, dates, birth dates, all sorts of ways that seem to be indicating a scripted storyline, a narrative. And I would also say that the reason they do predictive programming is a form of advertising to condition us for when they do whatever they're going to do. And what Caller has been focused on has been the body of predictive programming leading us to some kind of significant calamity involving Seattle and Donald Trump.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that as far as predictions go, he has put it down on specific dates. And if you think about it, it's not entirely inconsistent because the dates during which the biggest PSYOP events occur tend to be very significant, and in retrospect, they should be predictable. But anyway, but I understand how it sounds from someone who is not versed
I
in it.
agree. Like, I see that as well with the dates being significant, certain things going on, like, the whole 3/11 and 9/11, et cetera, right? So let me get this straight. So, like, what the caller was doing and what I think maybe the more intelligent way to go about it is that you try and tap into the pre-program, to try to get a trajectory almost of how things are looking.
Yeah.
And then you'll never really know till it happens, but then, you'll almost have a body of work following you into whatever calamity or something that you can reference because you've built a body of research essentially associated with it.
Yeah, and for example, I picked up on this theme of space junk being introduced into the collective psyche. And at first, there were no real examples that we could point to. And then I noticed more and more movies especially on Netflix, would feature infrastructure falling from the sky. And now it's been normalized to the point where there's a family in Florida suing NASA for $90,000 because of space junk. SpaceX junk is landing in farms in North
Yeah, I've
Carolina.
seen that too.
And so I'm like, the thing is, I was predicting it based on what they were inserting into the news, that we would see the advent of space junk as a thing. And interestingly, one of the big chunks of space junk that I made a point to talk about, it was on 3/11/2021, the pandemic anniversary. And I said, this is an indication that the next big thing that's going to cause a ubiquitous problem is going to likely be space junk, whether it's space wars or some kind of accident in space that causes cascading Kessler syndrome, where they all fall. But having said that, this recent piece of space junk that hit the home in Florida fell on that date. It was that particular pellet of junk that I referenced as being a key indicator that we're entering the age of space junk. And quite literally, that piece of space junk I
Interesting.
reference hit this house. So yeah, you can use it as a predictive model as you would in literature. This is like, it's a script in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So then the thing that people kind of freak out about is then they immediately want to know what, and they jump to too many conclusions, and they kind of freak out about like the bigger picture, which is not what we're emphasizing.
Right. What I have noted though is that there does seem to be a trajectory, and you can see it most pronounced in the space program. If there's any case to be made for scripted history being implemented on the world stage, if space is fake, then everything they're playing is essentially a story that they've written in advance that represents man transitioning into the space age. So I'm looking at this as it's a work in progress. They're directing society and they're transitioning us into progressive utopianism away from trad right values, away from individualism into
Right. Right.
it's a big transformation of society at large, and they're doing it through what I consider to be the state church, which is mass media.
Right. And it's like if you try to look at it from that perspective as well, it's like not every event has to be significant. But if you believe in like a greater evil, if you know quantum of conscience, you say it's the not nil or Satan or something like that. It's like it's going to be baked in because that level of complexity to even tie in these numbers into things that aren't very significant, but they're associated nonetheless. That level of complexity is not actually difficult to some other evil entity that is playing this out.
No, it's really not. And I don't separate media from magic. And when I say magic, there's
Exactly. Yeah.
stage magic, which is sleight of hand and misdirection. And then there's the ritual magic, which I call sleight of mind. And there's kind of a mix between the two where you get into logical fallacies and the art of lying to the masses and propaganda. But there is a point where magic, in the sense that it's been used traditionally, is connected to all of this. That's why we look at these bizarre rituals at the Super Bowl and otherwise. These are part of the entire. It's intrinsic. It's systemic. It's actually part of the core, and it's most clear with NASA. I mean, even Candace Owen, very mainstream characters, come out saying that NASA, from its very beginning, was full of paganism and Satanism, and that's true. It is true. But NASA is, if you ask me, it's Mystery Babylon dressed up with science fiction. So she was absolutely correct in that. I'm like, that's kind of not
Yeah.
even hard to find.
Yeah. It's like how does a metaphysical evil manifest physically, essentially, right? And it's like I'll give you an example in my life where I'm a truck mechanic. So I deal with a lot of like low vibrational driver types that do drugs. They're kind of shitty, kind of crazy people, and they're not necessarily mean, but I think that there's a lot of demons on them, essentially, if you believe in that kind of thing, or bad karma, whatever you want to think. And I'm getting out of this one guy's truck, and this guy in particular as well does a lot of drugs. Isn't necessarily a bad guy, but he's kind of like maybe not a good father, maybe not a good husband and stuff. And I can clearly see on him that I don't know if you remember the whole goblin face. I don't know what university was making that claim, but like where people are seeing people's faces distort essentially. Well,
Yes.
he's got it a little bit. But so and I can see that kind of thing. My wife can see it more. So that's a long story. And like, so I saw it on him for the first time. I was like, whoa, that's nuts. So, there's something going on with him. He's cooking something. And I get out of his truck. And this is the only truck that I've done this in like over a year. But I accidentally step out of the truck on the cab, right? And it's one of like the big trucks, right? There's steps on it. And I twist my ankle coming out of it, and I like almost fall on the ground, and it's just a little thing, but it's like that's his truck. There's some kind of wickedness going on about it, and it's like little stupid things like that where you say, is that just random, or is that the frequency of that vehicle that he's in? It's like a mundane thing, but it makes you wonder.
No, it's not necessarily a mundane thing. I think what you're I mean I'm not a superstitious person. I'm very much an objectivist in most ways, but I do have a personal belief that there is some kind of perpetual light versus dark thing happening, and that I don't know if it's half and half. I don't know how it works, but I know that a lot of people are neutral, gray. Many people are active conduits for dark, low vibe, negativity, psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, and then an equal number of people are conduits for light, which would be empaths, and everything that would essentially elevate people to higher consciousness or spirituality over bestiality, over basically man's spiritual nature dominating the meat suit. And I think that there is a constant tug of war, and I find that some people are more almost like they're byproducts of the material realm and may not even have souls, and may actually be here to corrupt ensouled beings into confusing their incarnation with their totality of their being, so they forget their origins. So I mean, maybe it's simplistic, but I do think there's some kind of good evil thing built into this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what you described there really does parallel a more biblical cosmology, which I relate to more in my life, where, there's the angels, there's demons, you have, guardian angels that you can't necessarily see. Most people are turned away from God, but aren't necessarily evil, right? Those would be the gray people. There's some people that are turned away and are actively wicked. Those would be the forces of evil. And there's the good people who are might not even necessarily know God, but they're empathetic, loving, or they do know God. There's parallels there. Just in my worldview, it's more around God, kind of. But you're right, though. Like either way, though, it does seem to work in that way, and that's the important part. Is that it seems like there's something that are constantly trying to drag people down, and then it's like it seems that like the forces that are evil more try to.
I hope we didn't lose the caller. I think the caller might have dropped off, but I will continue on where he's saying here. Someone says, "Here we go with the duality." I would like to think that there is a meaning behind some of this stuff, and to me, it not only explains it, but it makes sense because of my own personal experiences, where I found that the times where I've been compelled to act off of my intuition, I have been put in places where my agency was used in the furtherance of what can only be described as good. And I do think there's a difference between good and evil, and some moral relativists who are very sociopathic would disagree with this. But moral relativism, the idea that there are no intrinsically bad acts or there is no innocence, that kind of stuff is crazy. I hear relativistic people say, "Oh, if you're born and you have these bad experiences, it's because you wanted that." Right, right. I'm going to go incarnate on Earth so I can be mangled by a serial killer and dumped in a ditch. Right. I really think that's absurd. It's almost saying, well, the serial killer was just performing a useful function for somebody who wanted to have that experience. He was a facilitator of extreme experiences. That's just a way to cop out on calling evil evil. And who benefits from that but evil people? And there's that adage about all it takes for evil to succeed is for good to stand by and do nothing. And I think that is true in a lot of ways. It has to do with agency. That apathy wins by default, ignorance wins by default, and if there isn't pushback from the quote light or from a place of, I guess, good faith claims, then yeah, the bad faith claims, bad evidence, ignorance wins. I think that's just the default. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey Tim, I'm back now.
Awesome. Thank you for calling back.
Yeah. I got dropped off. I'm calling from Ottawa, so it's an international call.
Oh, okay. Well, okay,
But yeah,
cool.
I don't mean to bore some of the audience about duality like that, but I think that it is actually deeper than what people say when they want to dismiss it. Like it seems that forces that are evil are almost acting from an outside perspective on people, right? Those would be demons, right? And it's like you really have to consider like they're acting very unilaterally, like towards an objective, but collectively. And what that objective is, some people have opinions, but um, I I digress. I
No,
actually want to talk to you
I
about
think it's
something
relevant.
if you want to comment.
Well, I'm glad you brought it. I think it is relevant because I'm looking at this bigger picture, and I call it the lie world order. And I'm not a biblical person or something, but there are some things in the Bible that I find useful for explaining things by analogy. Like I like the idea of the darkness, the chaos, the abyss, and then let there be light in words. The word speaking creation into existence, and then what we have is the deviation, the opposite of God, the father of lies, who is spreading, of course, deviations from the truth. And it seems like we live in a world built on a foundation of lies, of misdescribing reality accurately, starting with the false model. So I think in many ways, you can, I think, describe this world as a byproduct of submission to lies and the power of words to cement our concept of the world is really paramount here. And so what we're doing here generally is I
Right.
think we're looking at the news and how it diverges from what we can actually verify. And so to me, I'm like, yeah, this world's built on lies and it makes liars out of everybody. The tell lie vision, kind of a cliche, but the mainstream believers are a bunch of liars. And a lot of truthers are liars. They manufacture evidence and they use logical fallacies and other forms of lying to spread their lies. So we just let's let it be said, people are liars.
Yeah, 100%. And it even goes parallel with the Bible, like that you're saying Satan is the father of lies, right? And it just, people get kind of tripped up about how, the only real difference is that Christians believe that the point of all of it is to draw you away from God, right? Draw you away from that relationship because that is paramount in that belief. But, then you can just replace God with anything else that you deem good, or if you just want morally ambiguous good, then that's another claim. But I was actually wondering if we could talk about vaccines, and I know that's another
No,
topic
no,
that
I don't.
maybe
Unless
people.
unless you're an activist and an advocate for it, I mean,
No.
you'd be preaching to the choir here. Like you wouldn't be saying anything that we've already heard. But no, I would just say this: the whole introduction of this topic was to give to the godless left a comparable concept of sin that they can be saved from, that the other side carries,
Okay.
that their priesthood can cure with their injectable Eucharist. I think it's purely a construct, and the agenda itself it's just cancer for the channels. You talk about it, and they will delete you.
Oh shoot. Okay. The only reason why is because I'm having a child soon,
Well, I
so
got
I'm
another
kind of
caller.
having
Thank you very
to
much,
make.
though. That was awesome. Appreciate the call. Don't want to hear about your personal medical decisions. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, caller.
Oh, hi. Is this hello?
Yeah, thank you for holding.
Oh, hey, Tim. It's Pete Tripp. How are we doing tonight?
Excellent. We're talking about uh, demons, good and evil, and other such things. What's happening over there?
Nice.
What topic did you want to get into?
Well, if it's open phones for open minds, there's a Manhattan Project anniversary tomorrow, where actually it's in your neighborhood in New Mexico. July 13th, 1945, the first atomic bomb was arrived partially assembled to the Trinity site at Alamogordo bombing range. And I just thought it was really interesting because July 13th, it was Friday the 13th, and it was there's a Trinity, word in it. So, hey, not really much for tonight, but it was a cool little history, story. I actually outlined a little bit more of it in the Gilded just a little while ago.
Oh, I'll
So
take a look because
people will check it out later.
I
Yeah.
recently went to the Atomic Museum here in town, and it's just down the street from me. And they have a model of
Nice.
the Manhattan Project's gadget and the tower, and they have artifacts from the Trinity site, including an American flag that looks singed, which is just from age. But yeah, I went over there and I checked it out. I didn't know the 713 date was part of it, and that is interesting to me for a few reasons. But the whole Manhattan Project, Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan, it's just loaded with symbolism. So that's just another data point there. 713 anniversary date to notice.
Right. It's a level of communication, especially for the month of August. I've called in about this in the last few years, especially because of the Oppenheimer movie last year. August is, for whatever reason, it's kind of like atomic month. Probably some Fallout, Netflix, show relationship there. Oh, it's not on Netflix. It was on Amazon. But one other thing, I actually posted a photo of it. It's the partially assembled bomb. Just looks like it's kind of like I wish we looked at a lot more of these historical photos the way we look at like the moon landing, photos. It really looks like it was just hobbled together with cardboard and duct tape and athletic tape and stuff like that. It's just so something else to laugh about how like so many people can just believe this stuff.
Oh my
and,
God. Yeah, I'm getting art project vibes
yeah.
off of this. Is that masking tape? That's the gadget. Okay. Oh wow, it looks like a movie prop. It looks like a movie prop.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So anyways, hey, thanks, Tim. I probably could talk your ears off, but I just thought I'd throw out a little tidbit for the evening. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go through your notes and appreciate the call very much. Call back anytime. Thanks, Pete Trippa.
Thank you.
August is Atomic Month. I receive military history updates, one of my hobbies. So this is from a newsletter that he posted in Gilded, which is why you should join Gilded. Go to ips.monster. Hitting y'all with an anniversary edition because the Trinity test is a key point in our center history. July 13th, 1945, first atomic bomb arrived partially assembled to the Trinity site at the Alamogordo bombing range in New Mexico, codenamed Gadget. Yeah, I actually have photos of the replica of Gadget here locally. And I got deathly sick for like a week after I visited this thing. And I don't suggest here that there's any kind of real radioactive waste there at the museum, but just kind of coincidental. Goes on to say, to hide that something was to be tested, they called it Gadget. The components were built at Los Alamos, transported separately to the test site, and assembled there by Ray Bradbury and his team. Now that can't, okay. The plutonium core had been delivered strapped to the backseat of a Plymouth sedan. Once assembled, the implosion-type plutonium bomb was completed, and it was raised to the 100-foot tower. So here in Albuquerque, they have a tower where they have it raised, and you can look and kind of see what it looked like. And to me, it's an obelisk, which is a symbol of the earth god they worship, and probably the more important part of the symbol. The test scheduled for 3 days later on 16 July 1945 was delayed until 5:30 a.m. Now, I read somewhere that they blasted it at 5:29 a.m. 7/16/1945. And the reason why that distinction would matter is here we go. July 16th, 1945, 5:30 a.m. Again, I've seen some at 5:29. But 7/16, here we go, at exactly 5:29 and 45 seconds on 7/16. 7/16 is a hugely important date in Stanley Kubrick's movies, in his propaganda. For example, Apollo 11 launches on 7/16. JFK Jr. dies on 7/16. Eyes Wide Shut released on 7/16. Lots of Kubrick connections with his movie releases and Kennedy deaths. Dr. Strangelove about the nuke released on 11/22, Kennedy death. So you have the nuke connection, Kennedy connections all throughout these various Stanley Kubrick productions. Well, JFK's birthday is 5/29. So in addition to the 7/16, which is JFK Jr.'s death day and Eyes Wide Shut day, again, the Trinity test, July 16th, 5/29. These numbers are just super consistent, as we're always noting here. Anyway, appreciate the input there. And if you join us at ips.monster, you can find the link to Gilded and to Discord. And if you want to take part in the observations that we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks here, go to the Discord and you'll learn how we're all going to do it, because we're going to come up with the best approach. We're going to have rules of evidence for what you can submit, and we want as many people as possible attempting to observe the space station on the same orbit. I have some comments on that. Let's see here. Anx G says Skylabs was a silly concept back in the 70s. I vaguely remember all the hoopla when the thing came down. Oh yeah, that's right. Skylab's anniversary was yesterday. Someone was looking up Starlink to see if they could see it, and there's a note on their website. It says, based on user reports, Starlink trains are not visible right now. And that's because they reduced their brightness to avoid disturbing astronomers. How convenient. Now, how do they go up there and turn the brightness down on all these Starlinks? They put visor sats on them, supposedly. No video of it. Like there's no video of the space station being built. Yeah, as far as the other caller bringing up anti-vax, truly nobody cares, in my opinion. And anti-vaxxers are so misguided. It's like, take care of your own family. Why are you going to stop the enemy? You have, in your belief system, the other side of the fence all want to kill you with this thing. And they want to kill themselves too. And it's like, well, let them just take care of themselves. It's a self-canceling problem. If it wasn't for anti-vaxxers, there wouldn't be any Democrats. If your thinking on it is correct. But no, it's not correct. It's only a construct. It's a left-wing version of sin and salvation. It's part of the World State Church of Scientism and Nasatology. This is why the left cares about pandemics and the right cares about moral panicdemics. It's because it's the archaic concept of sin versus the new sin. All right, Kevin Mooring says, these flat earthers show curve with P500 cameras. How come no detailed pics of the ISS? Oh, wait, please reword that. How come no detailed pics of the ISS? They take pictures of the moon. Not quite sure what you mean specifically, but I want to mention too that when we're talking about looking at the space station flying by, no lunar transits. We're not allowing people to do that. No solar transits. These are invalid. We have to have rules of evidence, and one of the rules is eyewitnesses. And I need to validate that you're an eyewitness by looking at your video. If your video, timestamped appropriately, shows the light or a light and it corresponds, then we might say that is probably valid. But if it's done through a telescope, hyperfocus on the moon, and you only see it for a quarter of a second, there's too much room in there for someone to have inserted a shot for editing. And there's no eyewitness because you can't see the space station at night. You can't see it during the day when it crosses the moon during these transits. That's why you need the solar filter, and you're looking at the moon as a silhouette. So we need to find it on nights where it will be visible to the naked eye. We want eyesight, eyeballs on the space station. Nothing else counts. Razzleheg 888 says space junk new normal to deal. Yeah, space junk is real to people now, but it was never real before. They made it real through movies and PR stunts. It's technically a hyperstition. It's like a superstition, but it's reinforced by the echo chamber in which it's bounced around. So right now, UFOs are kind of a hyperstition. The government actually wants you to believe in this. That's why they leak documents, because truthers believe leaked documents. And I mentioned this the other night because some flat earther I was conversing with on Twitter said, I believe in geoengineering because of leaked government documents. And I'm like, well, what about the leaked government documents or whistleblowers that talk about aliens? No answer. You can't use leaked documents for one thing you like and then ignore leaked documents for other things. Tomanoid said, how quick does it travel across the sky? It looks like 0.3 seconds to transit the moon. Yeah, people see it for like 6 or 7 minutes, sometimes 11 minutes, depending on where you are. Some people claim that they see it go horizon to horizon. Deep inside the rabbit hole claims he saw it go from horizon to horizon and that it's bright like the sun. People make all kinds of claims. And here's the thing. The reason people believe in it is because there are 10,000 bad claims floating around. So the argument is, well, somebody sees something, nobody knows what. And we are rejecting this. We have a new axiom here. Moving lights in the sky are airplanes until proven otherwise. You don't get to say maybe UFO, maybe Millennium Falcon, maybe Bigfoot on a unicorn holding a flashlight. No. You cannot insert a maybe something that may only exist hypothetically. You cannot until you have debunked everything else. If you debunk every possibility it was a plane, show it wasn't tracked, you can prove it wasn't a plane in every way, then we can talk about, well, maybe it's Bigfoot. But no, we're rejecting that. No more maybe Bigfoot claims. And also, when we have these evidence rules put out there, we're going to make it clear that if you're going to submit something, you have to be able to check the box. I believe, to the best of my knowledge, that this is the space station. None of this maybe, maybe not. Maybes don't get through the door. We have to be skeptics here, and we have to preemptively reject. We have to take the negative route, subtractive. All right, moving on. Space junk anxiety, says Diana South. Yeah, mental anguish. If you have mental anguish from space junk, you can sue NASA for $90,000. It's been done. We should do a class action lawsuit. If you're in the Infinite Plane Society and you feel like you have a lot of mental anxiety and climate angst and perhaps even a fear of planet killer asteroids, we could probably sue NASA. And there's enough money there to pay everyone. Look at the billions and billions of dollars they've thrown into that. What is it? Maybe it is. There is a black hole. I mean, they're not showing us any value for the money we've given them. Science fiction, bad science fiction, special effects that look like they were produced in 2010. The space station is not aging well. So where's all the money going? Like maybe there is a black hole. It's the one thing that's not fake. And they're trying to plug it up with money until they can figure something else out. Razel Haig 888 says consensus reality was always post facto. Well, here's the major philosophical crisis of our time. Imagine if everyone in the world had their nose buried in, and I don't want to pick on any particular cult, but we'll say Scientology. Let's say everyone in the world picked up Scientology, and now their entire worldview is filtered through that. That becomes their reality filter, and it shapes how they see everything in the world. That filter that everyone shares creates this, collective shared experience, fictional universe, you could say, shared frame of reference. But the philosophical crisis of our time is that we're not consciously aware that we've joined a dumb cult, because the ubiquitous cult handbook is the screen. It's the ubiquitous screen controlled by not just when I say media, it's media writ large. It's all media globally, including entertainment, the political psyop operas, the political theater, as well as the space stuff and all the fake news. So it's a monolithic worldview shaping entity that we all have our faces pressed into. That is our Bible. That screen is the Bible. So we are all part of the cult of Nasatology. But unlike normal cults where you're aware you're joining it, we were born into this one. The default is they put you against the screen. So you were programmed from the beginning. You didn't know you were joining a cult. So this is a bit of cult deprogramming. The second issue here is that the people who figure out that, hey, this screen is lying to me, what do? They look for more answers. And there are more answers supplied by the people who program what you see on the screen. They call these conspiracy theories. And the conspiracy theories take you deeper into the programming. They don't take you out of the program. That's why Alex Jones is constantly whimpering about World War III. He's constantly ranting and raving about how insecure he is. They're going to take our guns. It's always about to end. Why is that? It's because he's having a nightmare. There's the dream world for the normies and the nightmare version for the wokesters and the truthers. If you want to wake up, you have to deprogram. You don't go deeper into the box. You have to step back from the screen. I advise 6 feet. I just suggest, as a general rule of thumb, 6 feet away from the nearest screen. And what I mean by that is just figuratively speaking, you have to have a suspension of judgment before you believe anything on the screen. Don't just automatically absorb it like your face is pressed up against it, like it's a window to the world, but rather recognize it for the filter that it is. And whose filter? The programmers. This is the worldview they want you to have. You're looking through the lens finder of Big Brother when you're looking at the screen, no matter what you're watching. And no matter what you're watching, you could be watching the news and you see angry leftists marching because of the Roe v. Wade being overturned. And you're like, well, this sucks. Too much drama. I'm going to watch House of the Dragon on HBO. So you turn on House of the Dragon, and what do you see? The queen died in childbirth because the barbaric men need a male to perpetuate the kingdom, and even though she's the most powerful woman in the kingdom, she's still just a woman. She's a broodmare for the state, so she dies in a botched attempt to save her life while saving the baby. So in other words, you can't escape the messaging. It's so ubiquitous. We call this concurrent programming. Predictive programming is what comes before. Concurrent programming happens at the same exact time. Like you're watching the news about a school shooting and then you turn on Netflix, there's a school shooting. You watch Waco, American Apocalypse on Netflix. The next day, Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco and calls it the apocalypse. And we have numerous examples of concurrent programming, which weigh more heavily to me than predictive programming as evidence of news bending and reality scripting. I mean, this whole thing is rigged. Ryler05 says maybe a helicopter. Right. Well, the axiom says it's a plane. If you see a light in the sky, it's a plane until proven otherwise. The until proven otherwise could be you hear the helicopter. All right, let's see here. Mango says Bigfoot bigots are real. Look, I'm not against Bigfoot. I just don't believe in Bigfoot. I don't believe in unicorns either. And here's the thing. The person who says that they've seen Bigfoot or they've seen the unicorn are making a claim that weighs as much as those saying they've seen the ISS. These are non sequitur claims. These are things that aren't established as within the realm of possibility. They shouldn't even be included yet. You have to debunk, you have to take out your Occam's razor. Take out your Occam's razor and remove any leaps of logic, remove any hypotheticals, and just stick with what is known to be real. The consensus matters, like it or not. And I'm not here to deny reality. I'm saying that, yeah, the news is fake. The worldview gives us a construct. It gives us a model of the world, which is fake. But objective reality is real. The reason the programmers give you a false version is to disabuse you of any desire to own or control the real world. They want to take you out of it. Get out of the meatverse, get into the metaverse. Notice all the different movies on Netflix and science fiction films about digitally transcending, uploading your consciousness into a better place, opting into your matrix pod. That's pretty much what they're programming people for. And the thing is, there's a morality attached to it. Because if you're going into a matrix pod and choosing the metaverse over meatverse, guess what? You're saving Gaia. And you're saving the poor. Because climate change disproportionately affects the poor of the world. In fact, there are many pundits out there who say that it's sort of like rich white people are essentially an affliction because climate change affects blacks, people of color, third world countries more than where the people who are actually doing all the damage live. So they're just unaware of how much damage they're doing because everyone else is being hit with it. This is one of their long-term narratives that we heard for some time. So if you opt out of driving a big truck and traveling and flying, if you opt out of living, if you cut back on breathing even, yeah, they'll more or less, you're ascending a moral high ground. Like if you really believe the science, you believe we are in the end times. Think about that. If you don't believe we are in the end times, you don't believe the science. If you truly believe the science, you wouldn't drive a car. You wouldn't have an iPhone. You would be locked down. How is that not ascetic? How is that not like monks, living away from the world with the flesh, the temptations, the corruption of the soul? No, you can opt out, be an escapist. And that's what I'm suggesting here is that the Ready Player One Steven Spielberg movie explains what they're going to do, I think. They're going to create a more attractive substitute for the real thing, where people are going to opt into the Matrix. Okay, going through your comments. Kevin Mooring says the pod is your phone. Unplug. The thing is, I don't unplug, and here's why. Like I said, that there are the programmed, the programmers, and the deprogrammed. In order to deprogram, you have to know what the programming is. You have to know what the worldview is, as viewed from the believers. So you can pretty much look at everyone who's in the box as misinformed, and those who know what's going on are informed. And to be informed, you have to be paying attention. You can't unplug. If you unplug, you're uninformed. And the uninformed don't have any situational awareness. They less so than the misinformed. So when the misinformed are triggered by some massive event, the uninformed are going to be clueless. They're not going to have time to get informed on the misinformation to respond properly. So this is not a time to have your head in the sand. You should actually know more about what you don't believe than the believers. I aim for informed non-belief to weigh against low information belief. I'll take my informed non-belief over your low info belief any day. You don't know why you believe it, and I can tell you 10 reasons why it's fake. I distance us from the low information non-believers. The people who say, I don't believe in panda bears. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You have to have reasons to say you don't believe in these things. Otherwise, it's a flippant, meaningless claim like saying birds are fake. The birds are fake thing is a fake conspiracy theory that was created by the same people that did the Parkland psyop in order to discredit people who called that fake. So low information belief, low information non-belief, those are two different ways of approaching things that we need to avoid. And it's generally true that people who don't believe in the heliocentric model or NASA's mythologies tend to know more about it than the believers who think they're on a spinning ball. Okay, moving on. A Newful says, Tim, there's a new trend where men are choosing AI girlfriends instead of meat girlfriends. Right, not a surprise. In fact, that's a predictable trend. It's like Black Mirror. And so Black Mirror, the movie is all dystopian, this series, Black Mirror. Well, the Black Mirror, the iPhone, it is the monolith, which Kubrick referenced. And the reference in 2001 Space Odyssey, it ultimately refers to the movie screen. So 2 into 1, 2001, and it shows the sun and the moon, the eclipse. That's the 0, 0. So 2 into 1 is really about the eclipsing of the real world, that is the meatverse, and the metaverse. And moreover, it's the conflating of fantasy and real. 2 into 1, the subconscious, the darkness that they program, with the light of your awareness. So it's this alchemical processing of mankind where we have been merged with the monolith. We have been processed through this ubiquitous screen, through this black mirror. All right, let's continue. Thomas Hughes says, I agree, it's the monolith screen of all sizes. Yes. And it's notable, too, that on the back of your iPhone you have the HAL 9000 type camera lens eye, Siri, which is iris, backward. It's very complete. You know, the whole thing about the dissemination of all these monoliths, and these are some kind of alien transmission. Well, in this new age religion, aliens are gods, aliens are angels, AI is the new god. It's all part of this new construct. So it makes perfect sense to look at the iPhone as the monolith, as the new Bible, as the ubiquitous worldview shaper that all mankind is adopting. Okay, going into your comments. Rilo05 says it's like capitalism created a new market, it divided men and women and created an AI girlfriend market. Orders no market, make one. Yes, this is Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays' propaganda, it was all about how to manipulate the mass mind as a singular entity and create trends, create lifestyles, change the way we do things. Women's Lib famously adopted the cigarette as a symbol of liberation, liberty torches, as the result of a PR stunt designed by Edward Bernays. Same thing with bacon at the breakfast table. That became a thing as a result of Edward Bernays. And Edward Bernays was related to Sigmund Freud, and both of these individuals are blood relatives of the or ancestors of the founder of and CEO of Netflix. So the first CEO and co-founder of Netflix is related to Edward Bernays, all about manipulation of the mass mind. Manipulated to Sigmund Freud, all about getting beneath the hood, knowing our subconscious motivations, how to manipulate us without us knowing. And it makes even more sense when you look at Netflix in particular with predictive programming. Obviously they know something about what motivates people. And Netflix obtained all of your direct messages on Facebook. All of your browser histories have been assessed. They know everything about us. And as far as marketing goes and capitalism, look at how the horror story of 1984 was that you would never have privacy. And they've used marketing and capitalism to destroy the very concept of privacy, where now it's all about commodifying that, making the private public. Everything goes public. Privacy is a thing of the past. Social media, you put your family photo albums, your entire history, you log your every meal, and you just vomit out all of your thoughts, so it's a mind-reading machine, and there's no secrets between you and Big Brother. In fact, people get miffed if Big Brother's not getting them enough attention. They blame the algorithm. It's like, choose me, Big Brother, spotlight me. So they sold us on the nightmare. Instead of having to surreptitiously plant cameras everywhere, they condition us that, if you don't have your camera with you everywhere at every time, you're going to have separation anxiety. People take their phones into the showers with them. It's actually far worse than 1984 than he ever could have imagined. I mean, worse, it depends on how you look at it. I'm just saying it's more extreme and egregious. Brave New World is far more, I think, close to what we're describing here, which is where we get the phrase sea of irrelevance. And this is what I refer to when I talk about the media, the news. They give you so much news you can't parse it all on your own. So you rely on blue checks, you rely on filters, and most of it's irrelevant. That's why we refer to this as the raft, by the way. When penguins aggregate on the water, it's called a raft. And we are afloat atop this sea of irrelevance, unlike the rest who are submerged. And if you're on the wrong side of the screen, if you're not auto-hoaxing the MSM, you're submerged. It's now an ocean. You're in the ocean of irrelevance. It's like people are like cheering and throwing parties because Julian Assange is out. It's like, sorry, Julian Assange is not an auto-hoaxer. He's a world stager. He's still confined within the political horseshoe. No agency. You don't have any real agency if you're not deprogrammed. Look at Truman. Was Truman in the Truman Show? Was he someone who you would describe as free-willed? Absolutely not. He believed all the lies, and he was a total conformist, a fool, and a dupe, until he, of course, was awakened by the falling dog star. Jessica Lynn says, I want to be one of the savages they view while on holiday. Yeah, savages. That's what they call them. You're unprogrammed, the deprogrammed. Well, the difference is that, okay, we don't have any real savages. Like, there are no unprogrammed here. You have to be deprogrammed, and it's voluntary. So you can go the savage route, but if you're doing so as an act of deprogramming, you still end up an informed non-believer, an informed skeptic. Thomas Hughes says this is one of the handful of rafts. Yeah, see, this raft is unique, and we're growing this raft, but we're exercising a great deal of quality control. That's why we're shooting down the ISS and clearing the skies of chemtrails and debunking things like Mandela effects, because we don't want to be outnumbered by believers. We are specifically fomenting a culture of skepticism, and disbelief. Disbelievers, informed disbelievers, specifically, informed disbelievers, exercising a stable posture of skepticism with regard to the monolithic media. And this small group, relatively small, would be canceled, be destroyed, be diluted if we said, okay, chemtrail believers, you're welcome here, because we'd be outnumbered. And a chemtrail believer isn't someone who believes in chemtrails. It's someone who falls for loaded questions, shifting of the burden of proof, appeals to ignorance, appeals to motive. They fall for a host of logical fallacies. So we can't have them on the raft. It would tip this thing over. Copaesthetic says people have no clue how informed this raft is. Well, truthers have been walking around for years with the truther badge, thinking that they are the embodiment of truthiness because they disbelieve the news in a very knee-jerk, reactionary fashion. And I realized this is why I hung up on the anti-vaxxer. I'm anti-anti-vaxxer. I'm anti-pro-vaxxer. I'm anti-anti-anti-pro. But anti-anti is a very important position to take here. If you're taking the anti-position because you auto-distrust the mainstream, you're a puppet. Look who leads the anti-positions. People like Elon Musk, Alex Jones, all these world stage puppets. They are the anti-anti. You want to follow the QAnon shaman? Imagine following that guy up some stairs, like into a capitol. Like he smells like roadkill. Why would you follow that? So I reject the antis. Anti is always controlled opposition. And we used to let them in. Like, oh, you're anti that, therefore you're one of us. It's like, nope. That's why I'm voting for Biden. Because the anti's position is to vote for Trump. And even though I'm anti-anti and anti-pro, I'm voting for Biden to make an ironic point. Because anybody on the anti side who says, how dare you vote for Biden, I'm going to say, you think voting matters? And we'll have that talk. Russell Hog 888 says, reality's always local. Yeah, no kidding. That's one of the main points here too, is this meatverse versus metaverse thing. They want us to be metaverse dominant. They want us to be focused through this filter as though it's a window to the world informing us, when it's a filter conforming us to a worldview. And I see people walking around all the time with their faces glued to their screen, and I'm not necessarily criticizing it, but to me it's kind of an indicator, of where people are at, where their focus is. And that is an influencer. That is an influence. It's a filter. And again, I'm not saying unplug from it, but it's about using it, not being used by it, and recognizing it for what it is. And most people don't know. And that's fine. I'm not here to wake up the dreamers. We do, at times, kind of butt heads with the truthers and those who are espousing certain truth or orthodoxies, because many truthers have become propaganda mules, and they need to be called out on it, and hopefully they can correct course and join us. Or if not, they can take a firm stance on their wrong answers and help differentiate what they're doing from what we are doing. We don't want to mix. We want to have a quarantine. We want to have a pure auto hoax only off-world stage perspective, very ivory tower, inactivist, peaceniks. Otherwise, we're going to be lumped in with psychological operations meant to discredit or destroy what we're doing. I mean, consider how Justin Moan, whose trial has been postponed to August because he's mentally unfit. Justin Moan, the guy who cut his FBI father's head off and put it online and called for a revolution, called for a French revolution. Like, that person, in the minds of the media, is doing what we're doing. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. He doesn't trust the government. and he's going to call for some kind of revolution. So to distance ourselves from characters like that, we have to take this anti-anti position. Because I don't want to be in agreement with any of these manufactured fake terrorists. Flozik says, truthers believe celebrities are inverts. I stopped believing that BS once they claimed Shaq was born a female. I stopped believing them when they claimed that Stormy Daniels was born a male, and they refused to look at her. How many decades of content? There's like 40 years or whatever that she's been doing films and stuff. You could prove to yourself, but they won't. It's unfalsifiable, and now that's an important concept, unfalsifiability here. If your theory can't be falsified, if no evidence will prove you wrong, then it's crap. It's not valid. This is the basics of the scientific method. You should be trying to debunk your own theory to ensure it's the best possible explanation. If there's something better, it needs to replace it. And you can't ignore evidence. And that's what they do. They often do. They'll say, "Oh, this person got a brow implant. This person had their trachea shaved." So they have these ways of always being right if you find a contradiction to their rules. And what we're doing here, I'm saying I don't trust NASA. I don't believe their cartoons are real. But if somebody showed me evidence, then of course I'm going to have to change my take on things. And not only that, but I'm not running, like, people block me. These transvestigation fetishists will block me when I ask them, well, what about Sylvester Stallone? Look at this video. Show them a link, they won't want to confront it, and they block me. But I'm not blocking people who counter what I'm saying, who contest what I'm saying, who disagree with me. There are a lot of people who disagree with me about the space station being fake, but I'm willing to go out there and attempt to debunk my own theory. I'm organizing a mass observation night, which, if there is such a thing as a space station, will completely upend everything I've been saying for the last couple of years. But I have no fear about being wrong. Truth should fear no investigation. I'm here with the right intentions. And if I'm wrong about something, I'll be happy to know, because I can reverse engineer it. So if you can prove me wrong on anything, please do. I've been waiting. Ryler05 says, in the show Dragon Ball, the main character Goku tapped every woman on the foot to see if they were women. Maybe that's what the trans psyop people should do to make sure they're real women. Oh, that's not workable. The transvestigation movement, Mandela effects, these are very similar, in fact, to the fake panda thing. And these are what I call low information beliefs. Low information beliefs rather than informed, and they're accepting a premise very easily. Too easily. And I have a little bit of background in forensic anthropology. I took the military's 92 Mike, which is mortuary affairs. I took their course at Fort Lee, Virginia, a Pierce Mortuary College, where as part of our AIT, they would show us how to identify skeletal remains, sex, race, etc. And there are multiple skulls that you would assess it by, various types, and they had them categorized into broad categories. The people who are claiming that every celebrity is inverted in gender and they're hiding it, whatever, based on their skulls, are only using one single skull overlay. I remind them of this and they block me. So they're pretending at forensic anthropology, and all they can say for it is they spent. How'd you spend your summer, Mr. E? Looking at celebrity crotches. Ask any one of these T-vestigators how many celebrities they have poured over, and it's going to number in the tens of thousands. It's a weird obsession. I mean, it's a fetish, is what I call it. It's out of control. But that's going to stay in Trutherville. There's none of them on this raft. What a bizarre obsession. And it's not organic, by the way. These things are pushed. Mind viruses. Eddie F. says Dave Chappelle was on steroids. Or did he get replaced? A lot of people think he got replaced because they remember him being funnier. That he sold out or he was cloned. And aging accounts for a lot of stuff. People forget that celebrities do age. There's a lot of Photoshop in old pictures and headshots. Personally, I think it's a conspiracy theory that he was ever funny. Lieutenant Weinberg says, did Mr. E block you? I like that dude. Mr. E and I have never actually interacted, but I'm familiar with his work. And he is one of these who has anonymously fomented this notion, but he won't confront anything that contradicts his unfalsifiable theory. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Ryla05 says facial bones do grow as you age. Yeah, Mr. E is like one of the top in this field of research, if you want to call it that. But I looked into it like I look into a lot of things, and I can prove for myself it's not true because I have all these, like my ring finger I think is too long compared to my pinky or however that works. They look at hands and they make these claims. But the people who follow this stuff are gullible. You could say all dogs are cats and they'll believe you. Mr. E could do this thing, all cats are dogs. Here's how you can tell. Let's move on to something a little more important. Oh, George Magazine. So George Magazine is Gene Ho's project, and I've been calling them out for about a year now for being groomers because they have George Jr., where they've repackaged Q mythology for children, and George Magazine is burning as we speak. One of their writers and part owners, Beer at the Parade on Twitter, Scott Patriot, said, I'm glad that the verbal agreement I had to own 10% of George Magazine was reneged on and I walked away. Their CEOs, he's talking about George's CEO, and that would be Gene Ho, who was Trump's photographer, apparently is no longer speaking at this Reawaken America event. And there's a mass exodus from this George Magazine, which many people believed was JFK Jr.'s. And now it has people asking, well, who's George News? And I'm here in the comments to inform them that George News is actually someone who's in the White House, a White House press corps member, top tier QAnon influencer, person I'm suing. But anyway, kind of a side note, but from this channel's perspective, it's intrigue worth looking into because I've been covering this George phenomenon. And for people who don't know, the reason why the Q movement is what it is. Well, they believe JFK Jr. is working with Trump behind the scenes to defeat this so-called deep state. Before JFK Jr. died, he had his magazine called George. Well, right before Q came out, this George magazine came back. And so people think George magazine is JFK Jr. I saw this laughable theory being spread around, and I was like, no, I know who George is. I sued him before he was George, went back when he was MGTV. So we have a particular insight into this because we were involved with some of the key players in the Q movement before there was a Q. And we're 10 days away from the pre-trial meeting between myself, Google LLC, and George News, Marcus Goldfinch, which is going to be in Redwood City, California, Superior Court of California, San Mateo County. I sued, for those who haven't heard this, most of you have, I sued an individual for cyber stalking, among other things, and he had hijacked my YouTube channel by falsely claiming to be me to YouTube's legal department. So I sued them both. And it's not at trial yet. There's been this back and forth, but the pre-trial meeting is in 10 days. And so I'm expecting some development then. All parties have been served. I've done my part. I've made my intentions clear as for what I intend to do with this because it's a criminal matter that I couldn't get the FBI to jump on. So I took it civil. But my intention is to take this to the next level as soon as it possibly can get there. Okay, let's go through my notes. Yesterday we were pretty rushed. We talked about Shelley Duvall dying. She died at 75, the Shining actress. And this was somewhat notable because The Shining is connected with Apollo 11 and the fakery of the moon landing and Stanley Kubrick. And the movie Fly Me to the Moon just came out a couple days ago with Scarlett Johansson about faking the moon landing. So the timing of it is somewhat conspicuous. I haven't gotten too much deeper into it, but there is that. This morning we spent a great deal of time talking about our plans for the ISS video and how we're going to do these observations. Cubstar said maybe we should do the Chinese space station after, and we will. We'll do these in order. I think there's a lot of questionable things that we need to examine. And I've been thinking about ufology and how UFOs have always been a government psyop. If you haven't seen Mirageman, I recommend it. It's free, it's on YouTube, and it shows you how the contemporary UFO mythology was actually created here in Albuquerque at Kirtland Air Force Base by special agents. The special agents did it as some kind of a disinformation campaign targeting conspiracy theorists. So when, for example, King had said, when you say UFO, unidentified, it just means not publicly known. It doesn't necessarily mean beyond human technology. And I dispute that. When we say a UFO, it's like, oh, it's a UFO. Well, who gets to declare it a UFO? Just some random person who just doesn't know? Because there's a built-in assumption in their claim that it's not known. It's technically an argument from ignorance. And an argument from ignorance validates the ignorance. Like, I have a question, I don't know, so it's not known. And it's fallacious, because what you should be doing is, I have a question, let me get my question answered, instead of let me just spread questions without answering them. And all these questions or questionable observations, ambiguous observations that are spread in this manner, create this fog of uncertainty, what I call the fog of Psywar. So no, hypothetical craft do not count. Just because you don't know what it is doesn't mean it's not known. And I mentioned stage magic because the world stage is practically stage magic, and all magic shows and stage magic are predicated on the notion that whatever the audience can't explain, they're going to default to it was magic, or at least that's the premise. But we know it's not magic. We know it's a trick because we know it's a magic show. But if you're not Psywar aware, then you don't know this is a magic show. And when you can't explain something, your default is going to be it is what the movie magic portrayed it to be. And again, this is a similar thing, this argument from ignorance that we see with chemtrail enthusiasts. They ask a question. I don't know what that cloud is, therefore it's a question that needs to be answered, without ever considering that it already has an answer. But we have to look at this ISS sighting and many of the claims in the same way that we examine UFO claims. And a lot of them are just eminently rejectable. Okay, let's see what else we have here. A few other notes I took from earlier today. We've been talking about this ISS thing for such a long time, and I realized this isn't going to get anywhere if we maintain that they own the burden of proof, which they do. So one more time I want to emphasize that I'm not accepting their burden of proof, but I'm doing them a favor by doing this in order to really get rid of claims that should never have been given a pass. Okay, well, we have quite a few other things to talk about, but we're going to continue this tomorrow for Infinite Planes Saturn Day. We'll have more time for phones. We had a couple of great callers. Thanks for the calls and the chats as always, because this is a think tank, always has been. From its very origin, it used to be a black screen and just the chat. It was about the network of people on the same sheet, the Psywar aware. And that's what we're doing here. This is what separates what we're doing from any other channel, is we are specifically gathering together the Psywar aware and getting all of the naive, the gullible, the unaware off of our raft. That way we can have a solid body of skeptics, which would be formidable if we decide to challenge any of the presuppositions of the world stage model. But you can't challenge it from within the system. You can't wake people up because they're all within the political horseshoe, they're all within the false model, and they accept all of its hyperstitions and its God constructs. We can only reach, I mean, this is not going to go anywhere if we bring people along who still adhere to these various God constructs. You have to move past nukes, for example, bull cut shooters, end times eschatologies. Pippi Longstreth says, where is the raft moving next? Good question. Next is land. When we reach land, then we assemble the tank. And that's going to be taking place in the form of in-person cyber symposiums based around the book Auto-Hoaxology 101. Sort of like a book tour, but directed towards people who are already readers, like discussions. And we're going to be focusing each of these meetings on very specific events or phenomenon. For example, the ISS. All right, this is Auto-Hoaxology by Symbia. I'm going to put a link to the track below. We'll be back tomorrow for Infinite Plane Saturn Day. Get on the newsletter. Link is below.
On the screen doesn't make it real. I don't take the red pill, I don't take the blue pill. I just choose to follow my dreams, auto hooks and chill. I stepped off the world stage and I've moved away from all the fake outrage and the hearsay. And I don't give the time of day to those that naysay, because they got a bad case of the mind day. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading out.
Shout out really quick, Harmon Walker. Thank you for that. Just got that. Click the links below. See you all tomorrow.
Cause I've been reading auto-hoaxology. Nothing can bother me. Auto-hoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading auto-hoaxology, rejecting all the expectations of the auto-believer, to become a new creation on the
90 seconds.
Standing on the sword of truth, I step the backs of deceit, demanding burdens for the proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been saved by reading auto-hoaxology. Out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me. Cause I've been reading auto-hoaxology. Nothing can bother me. Auto-hoaxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading auto-hoaxology, suspending all the judgment, you won't get a reaction. Won't defend it, I won't budge until I get all the facts in. I won't argue with the bots about the next current thing. Crying over the fake bodies like a bitter death clinger.